exactly.
11% is kind of a normal month. So the point is, you start to tick off those benchmarks faster and faster, and that can create a kind of retail frenzy. I expect gold to be $4,000 an ounce by the end of this year, so 2025, and to go up significantly thereafter. So it'll tick up to 5,000, 6,000, 7,000. And one of the points I make, we can use calculus if we want to, but there's a lot of problems you can solve with fifth grade math.
Yeah.
So people say, oh, it went up $1,000 an ounce. Oh, it went up another $1,000 an ounce. If you own 100 ounces and it goes up $1,000, you just made $100,000. And that's true, and they focus on the amount, but what people don't think about less until the end is that every $1,000 increment, in my example, is easier than the one before because you're working off a higher base. So you go from 3,000 to 4,000, that's a 33% increase. But you go from 9,000 to 10,000, it's only an 11%
Yeah, exactly.
Increase. 11% is kind of a normal month. So the point is, you start to tick off those benchmarks faster and faster, and that can create a kind of retail frenzy. We're not there yet. But we got the gold price is being driven by central bank buying.
Yes.
And flat output. I'm not saying peak gold, but output has been constant at I think about 4,000 tons per year, 4,000 metric tons per year for about 6 or 7 years. So it's not crashing, but it's flat. But if you have flat output and increasing demand, the price goes up.
Yeah.
That's economics 101.
Absolutely.
So we're seeing that based on central bank buying. But the retail crowd, at least in the United States, hasn't chimed in yet. Wait till they do, and I think you'll start to see that more of that rapid escalation that we just described.
What's going to cause the retail crowd to suddenly wake up and think, I need to come to the party. I need to be a part of this party.
Yeah, it's a little bit behavioral. I mean, it's not clear that geopolitical earthquake. I mean, we just sent B-2 bombers to Iran. That didn't really have any impact on the price of gold.
Not at all.
So things like that can be a catalyst. The fact is, you don't know, but you don't need to know. What you do need to know is that it's a complex dynamic system that's subject to what are called emergent properties, which things just kind of come out of nowhere. So I could give you a long list of potential catalysts, but I would add that the potential catalysts don't matter. What matters is the state of the system, and it's primed for the kind of increase we just discussed.
Is cash trash going forward? Are governments going to turn around and say, we need a new reset, we need to have a new system that, I'm not saying we're going to go back to a gold standard, but is there something that's going to come in, whether it's the artificial intelligence use of that in terms of trading in a currency? Right. You wrote a book called Currency Wars. Talk to us about where you think that's going.
Yeah, cash is not trash. In fact, I recommend 10% allocation to gold of investable assets, but I also recommend a 30% allocation in cash.
How much?
30% in cash.
Has that changed recently?
No, it hasn't. I've been with that for a long time, yeah.
Okay.
So I have, 10% gold, et cetera, but I also have a large slug of cash. And by the way, who has more cash than anyone? Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett has $350 billion in cash, the most he's ever had. Why does Warren Buffett have $350 billion in cash? He sees what I see and what others see, which is the stock market is a bubble. Now, I'm not saying go out and short the indices because the bubbles can get bigger. People say you can't spot a bubble. That's nonsense. Bubbles are easy to spot. What's difficult is knowing when they're going to pop.
Timing.
The timing, exactly. So don't short the index because you can lose a lot of money being right. But it will pop, and when it does, first of all, people with cash will not lose a nickel because they're not in the stock market, at least not to that extent. And you can go shopping. You're the one, you're not selling assets in distress, fire sale. You're the one with the cash. I could buy this company or that company, et cetera. So that's how Buffett thinks about it. That's how I think about it. So cash is not trash. If anything, with regard to the U.S. dollar, far from money printing. I mean, the Fed's kind of irrelevant, but far from that, there's a global dollar shortage. When you see China selling Treasury securities, and they have been, the mainstream narrative is, they're getting out of the dollar, they're dumping treasuries, they're running for the hills, etc. It's not true. They are selling treasuries or letting them run off, but they're doing it because they need the cash. People say you have dollar reserves. You don't actually have dollar reserves. What you have are reserves and securities denominated in dollars. Securities are not cash. If you want cash, you have to sell your treasuries to get the cash, which the Chinese are doing, but it doesn't mean they're dumping treasuries. They wish they had more. What it does mean is they're desperate for cash to prop up the currency and prop up their banks. So not only is cash not trash, it's in short supply.
That's a very interesting. Now, I know that I don't have much time with you, but I want to just finish on this. The BRICS had a meeting this week as
Right.
we're here at the Rickards symposium. Do they pose some sort of a threat going forward, or are they irrelevant?
No, they're not irrelevant. They're very powerful. I follow them very closely. I don't think they pose a threat. This notion that the BRICS are going to come up with their own currency, maybe in 10 years, but not anytime soon. But the point I make, the BRICS already have their own currency. It's gold. And if they want to settle trade imbalances, they can settle them in dollars, even though they don't like dollars for other reasons, mainly because the U.S. has weaponized it. I told the U.S. government, I teach financial warfare at the U.S. Army War College, and I told government officials, lieutenant colonels, people of the State Department, CIA, I told them, I said, this U.S. economic sanctions, the weaponization of the dollar, will not only not work, it'll boomerang on the United States.
Yeah.
And I said that 4 years ago.
Yeah.
It's turned out to be true. The Russian economy is outperforming the U.S. The Russian ruble is stronger than it was before the war in Ukraine. If Russia has an economic problem, it's a labor shortage because they're on a complete war footing. So everything we've done has made Russia stronger and the U.S. weaker. So the sanctions don't work, but we've been doing them anyway, and that's caused some fear about the U.S. dollar. But the BRICS don't need a currency. They have it. It's called gold, and it's one more reason why gold is going up. That's exactly right. So I was really doing two things in the presentation. One is I'm trying to rebut this notion that Trump doesn't know what he's doing. Everything is chaos. There's market uncertainty. Somebody came up with this acronym, TACO, Trump always chickens out, et cetera. So the mainstream media, New York Times, CNBC, Bloomberg, all this is like, this is chaos in the White House. They don't know what they're doing. That is absolutely false. They know exactly what they're doing.
Okay.
I've been in touch, interacted with a lot of the members during the transition, the Trump transition team, people in the White House today. I understand what they're doing. It's not a secret. There were actually papers on it you can read by Steve Moran, chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors. So if you actually take the time and study what they're saying, there's a coherent plan. It has several parts. They mesh together very well. They know exactly what they're doing. So my first point is that this is not chaos. It's just a bunch of people putting out anti-Trump propaganda. If you take the time to understand it, it all makes sense, number one. Number two, this idea that, Trump's a barbarian, he's going back to tariffs, doesn't he understand? Free trade is good for everybody wins. If they have tariffs and we don't, we're better off, etc. This whole globalist free trade notion is, first of all, false. There's no such thing as free trade. Show me free trade. It doesn't exist anywhere in the world.
Okay.
What was Taiwan's comparative advantage in semiconductors in 1975? Zero. They didn't have one. They were good at tuna fishing and rice farming. They created comparative advantage out of thin air by government policy and tariffs and a lot else. So the point is you can do that, and that's what Trump's trying to do. So number one, tariffs can work for that purpose. But number two, in a broader sense, we're not doing anything new. We're going back to what the United States did from 1790 forward. George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, Henry Clay, John Quincy Adams, Abraham Lincoln, Calvin Coolidge, William McKinley, Teddy Roosevelt, Dwight Eisenhower, all supported tariffs and what the elements of what's called the American system. Henry Clay in the 1820s actually called it the American system. And it basically has high tariffs to create high-paying jobs, support U.S. industry, infrastructure investment. At the time it was canals, and then later railroads, and then later electrification. Today it could be AI data centers, but basically investment in infrastructure, strong military, not to run around the world invading countries, but to preserve U.S. interests, particularly forward deployed with the U.S. Navy. And that system was what really made America great, not in the last couple months or the last couple of years, but from 1790 forward. We only abandoned that in 1962 with the Trade Enhancement Act of 1962. That's when all this free trade globalist nonsense took off. So Trump is not doing anything radical. He's not doing anything new. He's simply going back to a system that worked for over 200 years and trying to revive it. So when he says make America great again, it's not a slogan. It's getting back to George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. Now, I explain this to people, and we gave a lot of detail in the presentation. And they say, yeah, Jim, I kind of hear you. It makes sense. But, isn't this going to hurt Brazil or hurt China or maybe hurt Australia, et cetera? And my answer is, yeah, too bad. That's their
Too
problem.
bad, too sad.
Exactly. It's Xi Jinping should make China great again. Lula should make Brazil great again. That's their job. Trump's job is to make America great again. So these are very positive for America. It could hurt trading partners, but let them figure it out. Lower their costs, get rid of regulation, get rid of the Communist Party. Those are heavy lists, but I'm not saying they'll happen soon. But I'm saying that's their problem, not ours. We're going to, and then by the way, just to be clear, Trump is saying to the world, you can sell anything you want to any American with no tariffs.
Yep.
You have to build it here. Build it here, meaning the United States. Put your factory in the United States and sell tariff-free. That's the solution. The short answer is both, and I do cover this in my book, Money GPT. Look, it's here. It's not going away. It's on the dashboard of your car. I open my refrigerator at home, and there's a light that's saying, change your water filter. That's artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
It's got a clock in there. It's like measuring humidity. I don't know why I don't change the water filter, by the way, but my refrigerator is talking to me, telling me what to do. Forget your car, your cell phone. They're all telling you what to do. So artificial intelligence is here. It's everywhere. It's not just on a desktop computer or whatever, laptop or whatever. It's in the complete environment that surrounds us now, and that's going to grow. Now, is it good or bad? The answer is both. You can actually cure some diseases. There are molecules that could create remedies that would cure or alleviate certain diseases that, in theory, humans could discover, but it might take 100 years.
Right.
But the artificial intelligence can sort of run billions of calculations in a very short period of time and discover these things. That's the good part. The bad part is, could it start World War III? And the answer is yes. I have a chapter on, in my book, Money GPT, I have a chapter on capital markets. I have a chapter on banking. I have another chapter. It's the only time I've ever written about Bitcoin, not my favorite topic.
No, that's not your favorite
topic.
topic.
Say, Jim, write about Bitcoin. Well, it's there.
Okay.
I talk about a lot else also. So I talk about the role of artificial intelligence in the nuclear kill chain. My recommendation is keep it out of the kill chain because it doesn't, artificial intelligence is very powerful, but it lacks empathy, sympathy, and common sense. And I have a whole chapter on what's called abductive logic. We're familiar with deductive logic and from Aristotle, and inductive logic from other sources, but abductive logic is not as well known, but that's the part that I refer to as common sense. Artificial intelligence doesn't have it, you can't program it. So my conclusion is that we will never, there's a lot of fear about what's called artificial general intelligence or super intelligence, where humans would be to the computer as gorillas are to humans. They would be the master and take over the universe.
Okay.
That's hypothesized, but I explain why that almost certainly will not happen. We're already seeing kind of the limits of artificial intelligence at this point. So that's the hope for
hang on a second, you just said we're seeing the limits of artificial intelligence. There's a limit?
Yeah, because of not just energy usage, but it's a little bit complicated, but so artificial intelligence, how is it created, how does it work? They have what they call large language models, where they basically turn the computer program loose on the internet. I mean, they train it on the internet. You can buy the internet.
Yeah.
I don't know how much it costs, but you can buy the whole thing. Well, what's happening is that output of artificial intelligence is going into the training set. So you have artificial intelligence training on matter that includes the output of other artificial intelligence. And the science is very good that actually, I compare it to making a nice rum and tonic. You know, you say, well, I want a bigger drink, so I'll pour in more tonic.
Okay.
Keep going, you don't have a drink anymore. You're diluting the rum.
You've diluted it.
Right. And artificial intelligence output, with its flaws, dilutes the quality of the training set, and pretty soon these programs go crazy. They actually don't.
They can't compute any more than
they just blow up in effect.
Okay.
So that's the good news, but the bad news is short of that, it is here and it's evading a lot of systems. I talked to a guy, very, very successful Silicon Valley entrepreneur, sold companies, etc., but also ran the CIA's venture capital firm, something called In-Q-Tel. The CIA,
the CIA has a venture capital firm.
Correct. It's called In-Q-Tel. Intel, intelligence, but Q is from the guy in James Bond who always said
yeah.
So In-Q-Tel, a little bit of a play on words, but he has a foot in Silicon Valley and a foot in the CIA. Probably the most informed person in both worlds, not one or the other, but both. And he told me, we were at a conclave in Santa Fe, New Mexico not long ago, and he said, Jim, we all know what we know, we see what's out there. He said, what's behind the curtain is even more frightening. They won't They meaning, Microsoft or OpenAI or some of the Google, some of the others. They won't even release it because they know you can't control it. There are no guardrails,
Wow.
there are no governors, there's no governance structure. So getting back to Trump, yeah, no regulation, okay, but we're kind of relying on the AI community not to unleash these Frankenstein monster type systems, which are already there, we just don't know about them yet.